Well, we're going to be talking right now about something that's really important to me. And that is this topic right here, el cuello de botella de la memoria de trabajo. My goodness, that is a mouthful. My name is Groshell. I'm a teacher and recently exited the classroom to do stuff like this. And I've been all over the world watching classrooms, working with teachers in all sorts of contexts, and trying to apply some of the things that worked for me, but internationally, and trying to bring some of what research ed is all about, which is the evidence. The things that we know about how students learn, how to disseminate those ideas so that all students can learn, especially the students, and this is very important to me, especially the students who come from the other side of the tracks, the students who find learning difficult, the students who are marginalized in many ways and come at a disadvantage. How do we help them learn? Not just the kids that already know all the stuff. So I'm excited to be talking with you today, and I'm just going to start clicking away. Here we go. Here's some of my things, including this book right here, which is Just Tell Them, which is coming out in Spanish. I'm so excited. Thank you to the folks at Aptus for helping out with arranging the translation into Spanish. I'm very excited. I'm told that it will be in a general enough Spanish because it is a Chilean company. I'm told that it will be in a Spanish that you can understand. So I'm very excited. Now, what I wanted to do was start with a video. Let's watch this video right here, and I want you to think to yourself, why does this teaching work? What we're going to see up here is a teacher teaching this child how to do a backflip. I will not do a backflip for you right now, okay? I don't know how to do, I'm not like Benson Boone. I don't know how to do that stuff, but we're going to watch him do this video, and we're going to watch him teach, and I want you to start thinking, why does this work? What are the characteristics of the instruction? What are the components of the teaching that make this so effective? This was viral on TikTok, so let's go ahead and check it out.
Este estudiante entró y quería aterrizar su primera voltereta hacia atrás. Así que empecé asegurándome de que supiera cómo hacer una voltereta hacia atrás y luego le pedí que saltara de espaldas sobre estas colchonetas porque quería observar su forma y que su forma podría ser un poco como el despegue. Así que le expliqué algunas posiciones corporales que tenía que adoptar en su despegue para hacer una buena voltereta hacia atrás y cómo extenderse y empujar con las caderas para un buen despegue. Después de eso le expliqué su flexión. Debía juntar las rodillas tan fuerte que pudiera levantarlo del suelo. Y ahora que sabía la posición del cuerpo hoy, lo estaba haciendo tan bien que añadimos otra colchoneta porque saltaba mucho más alto. Luego pasamos a practicar el aterrizaje de una voltereta hacia atrás, haciéndole hacer este ejercicio en el suelo, en el que gira hacia atrás sobre los pies en el suelo y como que localiza el aterrizaje. Se familiarizó con el aterrizaje de una voltereta y le pedí que lo practicara a diferentes alturas. Después de eso hicimos esto en un bloque más delgado. De esta manera puede combinar las dos cosas, saltar sobre espalda y luego rodar sobre sus pies. Porque eso es exactamente lo que iba a hacer cuando empecé a vigilarlo. Iba a hacer que saltara sobre su espalda y luego a sus pies. Poco a poco empecé a vigilarlo cada vez menos y a hacerle hacer más trabajo hasta que dejé de ayudarlo y empezó a hacer la voltereta hacia atrás solo. En ese momento lo que teníamos que hacer era hacerlo sobre unas colchonetas finas que había en el suelo y retirarlas poco a poco, hasta que empezó a hacerlo en el suelo solo. Fue así como aprendió a hacer una voltereta hacia atrás.
Hey, give him a round of applause. Very nice, very nice. I like that. So here's what we'll do. And with my classroom, I'm a lot stricter than what I'm going to do with you. In my classroom, I have A partners and B partners. And when I say turn to the person next to you, my students do it very fast. They go like this and they go like whoosh. And they just start talking to each other. And then I say, bring it back to me in 3, 2, 1. And they all look at me, quiet. And then we start talking. You guys can do just like that. I know it. You're that good, okay? So what I want you to do is just turn to the... Sorry. Can you turn off the audio real quickly as I go? And you're going to turn to yourself and you're going to tell the person next to you, ¿por qué funciona? Why does that work? Ready? Go. And bring it back to me in 3, 2, 1. Now, I don't need to do this. You'll notice with my class, it's same thing here, is I stand on my tippy toes and I look like this around my class when I go 3, 2, and I like crane my neck around and I look around. There's one kid in the back, his name is always Johnny in English. And I look over at Johnny and I go, oh, just waiting on one. Thank you, Johnny. And back to me, and then we just rock it, right? I forgot to mention, usually it's normal, socially normal when you turn and talk to say buenos dias and mi nombre es, me llamo. Did you guys do that? Go ahead real quickly, introduce yourself and make sure you know their name, okay? Go ahead. And back to me in 3, 2, 1. Now, here's some of the things you might have discussed, some of the things that you might have mentioned. There's too many of you, but in my classroom, I stand in place, I get them turning and talking, they're talking, and I watch and I look, and then I go ahead and I circulate, and I do what we call the quarterback, because we have a American football metaphor, and I go around like this, and then I look up, and I listen to each table. Some of the things you might have said were some of these things. Presentando en pequeños pasos. Clear and unambiguous communication between the student, ensuring that there's a brisk pace and a lot of interactivity back and forth between me and you. You notice that the teacher talks a little bit, models just a little bit, doing this thing, and then goes right back to the student. There's something of like a recursive type of like a successive approximation towards the skill, because the skill is broken down into its smallest parts. And because of that, they take those parts, put them back together, and allow the student to be able to do it independently. And if you notice too, there's this process that goes from the student doing small little things and the teacher's doing a lot of the heavy lifting towards the end where the student's doing it all by themselves. And that last bit, the student doing it by themselves, is really where the motivation I notice in my classroom comes out. The kids respond to being successful. They respond really well when like this kid, I can do this. And in this case, I can do a backflip, but it applies to everything. I can do anything I've set my mind to, given I have the right instruction at the right level with a teacher who knows how to teach the heck out of this stuff. There's something just great and there's a virtuous cycle, we like to say in English. There's this feeling of success begetting or breeding success, where that spills over into all sorts of things. And soon you start to become a backflipper. You start to become a mathematician. You start to become a scientist. I actually am getting a little bit emotional right now because I'm thinking about some of the students that I worked with that didn't see themselves as mathematicians at first, but they can become that mathematician given they are given proper instruction. Now, what is this thing called? This pattern right here. I didn't make it up. I didn't put it up here on the board just from the backflip video. It comes from the research into how effective teachers teach their students. And it has a name. It has a name that I think we all need to embrace this weekend. And that name is explicit instruction, or enseñanza explícita, sometimes called direct instruction. This process of getting students to eat their vegetables, not just eating candy, but getting them to the point of being able to do stuff by themselves through very rigorous instructional design is something that I think is important that all of us spend the rest of our careers reflecting on and getting better at. But here's the thing. Here's the argument I'm going to make today. Explicit instruction, as the board says right up here, it's actually designed based on principles around how kids learn. And we've spent, myself and my world as the researcher, have spent many years trying to figure out what is the secret sauce to learning? What is like rocket fuel to learning? And my argument today is that it's not only that it's explicit instruction, but that explicit instruction is based around principles from learning science, from cognitive science, that we can really rely on when we think about what type of teaching do we want to see in Colombia? What type of teaching do we want to see in classrooms here? So let's go ahead and dive into that. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this bottleneck. When I was in Chile, I talked about how this was very much like a bottle of wine. And for you, I guess it's more like a bottle of aguardiente. I don't know how it works exactly. But I'm going to go ahead and explain a model right here using this bottleneck. All of our students come in with this very narrow bottleneck that we can call working memory, or memoria de trabajo. And what working memory is basically our thinking system. It's the thing that we use to work with the material that the teacher or the textbook presents to the child. And all of us have this thing. Some of our working memories are a little bit stronger than other working memories, and there's not much we can do about those differences. But the truth amongst all of us is that we all have a limited working memory bottleneck, as I will explain in a moment. Whatever you're teaching the kid, it exists out here. I mean, this is obvious. Kids need to learn the things that are important for the world. We want kids to make something of themselves. We want them to go out and reach their full potential. And to do that, we have to transmit information that's beautiful and useful and wonderful, so they can spend the rest of their lives thinking with those amazing thoughts that they have. Even in the age of AI, this is so important, if not more important, that we arm every child with the ability to think critically for themselves rather than relying or offloading all that information onto some computer-based system. Now, so I said that there's information out here, that's obvious. It needs to go into this working memory bottleneck, and this working memory bottleneck, unfortunately, doesn't work very well. It's very limited. Researchers have debated and talked about the limits of working memory, but those limits are around 4 items at a time that a child can process simultaneously before that information just slips out of mind. A lot of teaching, especially maybe in the United States, is designed around approaches that give kids lots of things to do, projects and group work and things like that. And these things, maybe in a brief, very aligned way, at the very end of a unit of learning, could have a place for application. But teachers are told that the best way to teach kids is to give those projects and group work things up front, like at the very beginning, and the kids are meant to figure out the material by themselves. The problem with this approach, which has been talked about and debated about, and I believe that there's much more consensus than we'd like to admit, is that this information, once it goes into this working memory bottleneck, ends up just basically bobbling around in there and clogging up the working memory bottleneck, and then learners do not transfer that information into their long-term memory. What is long-term memory? That's easy. What is memoria de largo plazo? I'm so sorry, my Spanish is absolute trash, but let's keep going. What is this? This is just who the learner is. All of their experiences and their knowledge and their skills. And if we're not very, very careful about how we design instruction, if we don't do like what the backflip teacher did, then we risk the chance of students not being able to transfer that information, and then it will not be able to go into long-term memory. Now, I want to give an example here of working memory in action. Here's what I'll do, and I'll wait for the translation to keep up. I'm going to put some numbers up here on the top of your screen, right here in this space. I'm going to give you a series of numbers, and I want you to try to remember them. Try to remember all of them. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers, probably about the length of a phone number, and I want you to see if you can remember it, and after that, I'll test you. okay? So let's give that a shot real quick. So here we go, get ready. You're looking up here. I'm gonna display the numbers, and the numbers are gonna come by real fast. Your job is to remember them. Okay. Turn to the person next to you. Do you know the numbers? Go ahead. Tell them what you have in mind. Go. And bring it back to me in 3, 2, 1, 0. Now, this is hard. And all of our students are dealing with some amount of information that we're making them deal with at any point in time. Here's actually the numbers right here in case you're curious. Oh, wait. What did I do? I just presented it backwards to you, but starting here, did anyone raising your hands, did anyone get them going in this order? Did anyone actually get them? All of those? Really? No, you aren't, you show off. You didn't. No, you did not. Oh, yeah, she wrote it down, is what she said. She wrote it down. Well, now, let's think about what this implies for teaching. Now, all of you, if you couldn't get that number out, you had some level of what we could call cognitive overload. I gave you too many pieces of information at once, asked you to repeat it back. It just was too much because you didn't have enough time to practice each of those pieces of information. You didn't have enough time to receive feedback on that information. You didn't get the instruction of the backflip. You just got a bunch of numbers. It was just too hard to remember. In my class, when I was teaching, often I would see signs of sobrecarga cognitiva, or cognitive overload, in my classroom. Things like this. All of you as teachers have experienced these things. I mean, this one's important to me so much right here. My kids aren't learning. My kids can't remember the stuff, and I'm getting frustrated at them. Man, why don't you remember all the things that I just told you? It took a little bit of time to reflect on that maybe it was me. Now, of course, there's more. And one of the things that Research Ed is here to do is this last line right here. That despite all of these struggles we have of students struggling to learn things and struggling to remember things, that ultimately our job as teachers is not to blame the children for their background, for where they came from, for who their parents are, or for any of the other excuses that I feel like I was told to believe in early on in my teaching, and instead to focus all of my attention on what matters and what I can control, which is to fix the teaching, to fix the instructional design of what I'm doing and how I can curate the environment so kids can learn. All of you have seen stuff like this. By the way, I put this into ChatGPT in the old days, and I said, have kids that look naughty are misbehaving, and ChatGPT put devil's horns on the top of some of their heads. And so I've kept it in memory of the old GPT models. Let's keep going. Now, so we all know this right now. This bottleneck you're going to see right here, you're going to see this in a lot of the presentations today. a lot of the presenters are going to reference this because it's the fundamental model of how kids learn. And if I give some kid a huge project or a discovery experience, some big essay that for which they've never been taught the fundamentals of writing, or if I just say to a kid, hey, go do a backflip, see how that works for you, what's going to happen? I mean, the math equivalent of breaking your neck will happen in math, right? And so one of the things I wanted to talk about in this presentation was just the power of taking that big blob of material that we often don't decompose for the student, and thinking about how to break it down, how to atomize it so that just a little bit of information at a time is presented to students. And as they acquire the knowledge, as they get better at it, we slowly start to take away those scaffolds and supports, and we start to put the pieces back together. That's what great teachers do. So let me dive into this. So I taught kindergarten and first grade for many years. Anybody here teach the youngest students? Raise your hand. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, great job. I'm never going to do it again, right? No, it was fun. And one of the skills that we teach in early mathematics is this one right here. Now, what I would do, well, I'll tell you the full skill actually by the end. By the end of the year in the United States system, all children at age 5 should be able to do this. They should be able to say, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then put a 7 at the end of the equation. That looks so easy to you and I because we're all experts. We all suffer from expertise-induced blindness in the sense that we all know this so well that it just seems like the kids should pick it up so fast. But actually, this takes like 25 lessons to teach. It takes many days. I didn't know that. And so what I did when I first started teaching was I had my kids and they had these little whiteboards about this size. And I would go up to the board and I'd say, okay, 4 plus 3 equals 7. Awesome. All right, your turn. 3 plus 2. Do 3 plus 2 on your whiteboards. And 3, 2, 1. Show me. This half of the class got it. This half of the class didn't get it. Guess who these kids were? These are the kids that already knew the math. Their parents taught it to them. I mean, come on, right? Who are these kids over here? These are the kids who need me to teach it properly. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity now to answer this question with the person next to you. There are a lot of smaller skills on the inside of this problem. You might notice that you have to say this. You might notice that there are lines or dots that you need to draw, or maybe you do it on your fingers. And then you might notice the parts at the end and all these things. So I want you to answer this question with the person next to you. ¿Cuáles son las habilidades componentes? What are the component parts of this? What are the small skills on the inside of this one? To the person next to you, come up with them. I think I came up with 8. There's like a lot. Go ahead and chat. And bring it back to me, please. In 3, 2, 1. Oh, you guys are so smart. You know this math. Good job, good job, good job. But now, let me go to year 2 and year 3 and year 4 of teaching. Someone named Pat McGregor, who was my mentor, my instructional coach, he sat next to me and he taught me something that I'll never forget. And that's essentially that children can't just be given this whole big thing, or they're just going to get overloaded in their working memory and they won't be able to do it, and they'll get frustrated and they won't feel successful. You got to teach it better, man. And so some of the things that kind of go into this skill, by the way, let's just list some of them right now. Well, one of those is you might have noticed that this is actually the advanced skill. You have to count on from the first number. That's hard. So the skill before that is essentially just to draw the lines for all of them. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you put a 7 in the box. You have to do that first, otherwise they can't do that other skill. There's no way. But now look at this problem. Now we've got these lines, or my fingers, or these dots. By the way, in math education, teachers are told, let's teach them every way possible. Let's do the fingers and the dots and the counters and the blocks and the bears and the thing. You don't need anything more than lines, my friends. They'll learn the principle and be able to generalize from that if you just stick to one method that's the most efficient. But now we have all these lines, right? And so, well, what does that mean? Well, have you ever tried to have a kid count like this? What do all kids do when they do this skill? They go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. All children do that. You have to teach them that when we count objects, even if they're in separate groups, we can count on from the first one by coordinating our finger and touching the lines. Well, there's so much more. Look at these darn lines. Do kids come into school in kindergarten being able to hold a pencil correctly? Be able to draw lines in a very straight and neat way? No, they do not. If I start off with that assumption, who am I prioritizing in my learning, in my instruction? I'm prioritizing the kids whose parents gave them pencils and taught them how to do that. That's not equitable. So I've got to teach them how to draw lots of lines. So I might have tasks like this. Given a number, here's 4, draw 4 lines. Given a 3, draw 3 lines. We'll do this so many days. It takes a long time because we're building up the automaticity. We're building up the skills towards this backflip at the very end. The 4 plus 3 equals 7. Now let's keep going. Now, you noticed, I'm sure, that you have to say cuatro and you have to move on forward. That starts, by the way, as a verbal task. You have to do it verbally because the kids still don't know how to hold pencils. So we practice over and over again. Hey, everybody, get 4 going and count 5, 6, 7. Okay, get 2 going and count 3, 4, 5. What do all kids do, by the way? They just keep counting. They go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're like, shh, stop, right? And so you have to also teach them that given a number that I give you, you can stop on that number. These are all skills that are embedded into the thing. Well, what about this thing right here? There's this equal sign right here. Do they know what that means? Do they know what this means? We have to teach them the concepts that underline the procedure. We have to teach it directly and explicitly so they know what they're doing. Like this rule up here. You have to end up with the same number on this side as you end up with on the other side. Later, we might call that balancing the equation. Now, and we do tasks like this in class. Is 4 the same number as 4 lines? The kids say yes. What about 7 lines on this side? And we can actually vary the sides. Is 4 the same number as 3? No, right? And we work on that because we're strengthening their conceptual understanding of equality and of addition and of operations. Now, there's other things. We've got to have them read lots of versions of equations. And then we've got this pesky 7 over here that they've got to end up writing. Well, what do we got to do? We've got to have them practicing their writing so that they get real great muscle memory in that hand so that the day that I put this equation in front of them, they can automatically deploy that skill effortlessly without having to think about their handwriting or how sloppy it looks. Now, let's put all this together real quickly. And this is what I would say is called the power of design. The power of learning science, el poder de diseño. I have all of these skills that I just listed right here on the side. And what a great designer does, a great teacher, is they weave them together. They put them together and carefully start to combine them. And that's what I started to do as a teacher, started to realize. And at first, these skills were taught in isolation. But I would then integrate them, putting them together so kids have to do more and more at a time. This matches what we know about that working memory bottleneck. At first, those little skills are so hard to do, but once you master it, they just become easy, so let's put them together with another one you know. And then, of course, I start with a lot of teacher-led modeling and demonstration. It's me because I know how to do this, and you don't know how to do it, so I'm gonna be the one that shows you. But over time, I start to pass the baton. And now you're doing these things by yourself. And largely, your learning is just practice of things you've learned before. And we start to weave these things together all over here, and then the magic happens. 27 lessons later of lots of great instruction, I go to the same activity. The kids have their little whiteboards. I say 4 + 3 equals. Do it on your whiteboards. 3, 2, 1. Show me. And they all get it right. All of them. Even the kid, Faiza and Akaika, these kids I used to have, even the kid who I think in society we discount from learning this stuff. We say they can't do it because they live over there. Their mom and dad do this. Even they can learn it, given we teach them properly. Now, look at me getting all emotional. I'm probably thinking about my kids mostly at this point. But take a look now at our working memory bottleneck. We know that we have this capacity, this processing system that acts kind of like a barrier, a buffer that we all have, and it's very hard to learn new things. But with great teaching that breaks it down step by step and helps kids to become more independent, we can go right through that working memory bottleneck because the pieces are small enough. However, I didn't tell you about another thing about our model, which is this last piece over here, which is that once you know how to do something, working memory becomes irrelevant. Once you have the power of a skill built to automaticity, built to fluency, children can deploy that skill without needing to use their working memory whatsoever to do great things. And this is the power of education, the power that we all have control over, which is that if we design things the right way in the first place, if we get it right up front with great explicit instruction, then we can have them doing incredible problem solving, thinking critically, and being more creative with the things that they've just learned. It's what I got into this job to do, was that very thing. And this is a little bit counterintuitive, this part. What do you mean that this thing over here, long-term memory, overrides or bypasses working memory? Well, let me give you an example from my own life. I was never trained how to use Excel spreadsheets. No one taught me how to do them. When I went on to get my PhD, all of a sudden, I need to do a task like this. I'll let you read it. You can imagine how frustrating this is when you do not know how to do these things. My long-term memory looked like this little dot right here. I knew very, very little about how to use Excel, so what am I doing? I'm banging my head on the table and getting angry, and I'm just like, why do I have to do this? I'm later told by people that know how to use Excel that this task takes them about 15 seconds. And what takes an expert 15 seconds takes me days, weeks of struggle. And by the way, I don't even know how to do this still. Thank you for AI, now I just give it to them, right? There's a lot of truth in when you give kids skills that are far above their capacity to solve, that they may even solve the problem correctly eventually after banging their head against their desk for so long, but at the end of the day, they don't remember how they did it. It's a lot like my dad with computers. My dad, if you have an older dad who doesn't know anything about computers, you will relate to this. My dad calls me up all the time. He says, hey, Zach, my computer, it's broken. I drive 45 minutes to his house. I get there, and he goes, hey, I fixed it. Oh, what did you do, Dad? I don't know. I just kind of clicked around and just kind of figured it out. He didn't learn anything, but he solved the problem, right? Same here. Well, now, I don't have enough knowledge to be able to solve this problem, so it's very frustrating. My working memory is easily overloaded. Over time, and cognitive scientists love to talk about sort of novices or novatos, and the transition that students go from being a novice to being an experto, an expert. And it's really just a description of how much they know, what's in their long-term memory. And experts can solve problems like that in just a matter of seconds. Just imagine that I knew all the things that you need to know to solve this particular type of problem. By the way, this is all the things you do need to know, I'm told. If I know all of these things, this takes me no time at all. And in fact, I might even enjoy using Excel for the first time. It might be fun. So let's use some educational examples. I have this text right here. All of you can read. So when you read Pepe toma sopa, la sopa está en la mesa, you read that in probably half a second. You might have even seen this text right here as one unit, one item that you read almost all at once. Children are not like that when they come into our care. They need to know this stuff. And so, in the United States especially, we had all of these debates over how to teach kids to read. And a lot of people had a great idea. Let's just give them lots of books, have them sit around the room, dig into these books, and they'll teach themselves how to read. It was nonsense, and eventually we found out that was a terrible way to teach. You walk around the room and the kids are holding the book upside down. The teacher's walking going, yeah, my kids are learning tons, right? The principal's like, yeah, they weren't learning to read. And so we developed a method that we now use largely in every state, but to some degree still there's resistance towards this approach. The phonics approach, which is basically, we can use this model right here to understand why phonics works, why teaching the small parts, the letters, the squiggles on the page individually, putting them together into words, taking the words and putting those into sentences, taking the sentences and putting them into paragraphs, and finally, we give the kid the book. Like my daughter is reading a book we call A Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I don't know if you know that book. And she just sits there and just reads it. The joy of reading has been unlocked for her because someone taught her the squiggles on the page a long time ago. And that person was me, but whatever, let's keep going. Now, the thing is, especially in the United States, we have this weird thing where people understand how to teach reading, and they understand how to teach the backflip, but they don't apply the same concepts to math. It's the weirdest darn thing, because math is the same exact thing. And in fact, there's no part of our brain that is a math brain and a history brain and a science brain. We have a mind that operates with this working memory bottleneck that applies to everything. So let's think about it in math terms. I give a child 378 times 873. Well, what do they need to know? They need to know the concepts that multiplication is just repeated addition. They need to know the procedure. They need to know how to line up the columns and get the numbers in the exactly straight way. And then they need to be able to operate with the procedure that you all know. And they need to know this. They need to know the facts, the multiplication tables that are inside of that problem. And once you know 8 times 7 equals 56, and you can just rattle that thing out, what happens when you see 378 times 873? You take out your pencil, you put it on your paper, and you work the problem in seconds. And you turn to your partner and you go, I'm done. Are you done? Let's check our work. And you feel pretty darn good about yourself. And we have this weird thing in the United States where we think, hey, let's teach kids the squiggles on the page, but in math, let's give them lots of blocks and bins and stuff to play with. The kids will play with it, and they'll somehow absorb the math like a sponge or something, and it doesn't work. And we have to, in my country, that's the big debate. Let's get ahead of the United States in this one in Colombia and just teach the math with explicit instruction. They'll learn it a lot faster. Now, let's review some of these principles I just went over. This is the first one. And then we know that working memory is very limited, but those working memory limitations can be overcome by the contents in your long-term memory. And finally, all of these principles are what come into play when it comes to how we should teach. And how we should teach, certainly, is by a core that's based in explicit instruction. Now, I'll give you just a few more seconds to read this, but then let's go ahead and give some examples here. I'm just going to check on the time because I know we're behind schedule. Wouldn't it be a gift to this whole thing if I ended 5 minutes early and I don't know. Let's see. Now, a lot of people ask me though, what is explicit instruction? Like, I kind of feel like you're talking about old school teaching. You're talking about like one of my teachers a long time ago who was standing up in front and just lecturing and talking and droning on, and the children are sitting there or they're copying everything that the teacher is doing. And then, they show me black and white images of kids with bolted down desks and kids, being really bored in school. That's not what explicit instruction is. We need to take the research-aligned definition and understand what it means when it comes to this effective method. This method that just gets kids learning faster than anything else we know about. Well, it usually starts with the teacher modeling the material. But the modeling happens in small steps, in very incremental small pieces, often with minimal statements. I say, this is a 4, what number? 4. And I immediately go back to the student and ask them to repeat it back. And it's just a very short, what we could call, yo hago, I do. I do just a little bit. And then once I've demonstrated it, because how else would they know what this thing is unless someone else taught them? So I've got to take control of my classroom, teach the material so that they learn. After that, we do it together. Nosotros hacemos. We do it together. And what I mean is, I get the kids to repeat it back to me. I get the kids to turn to their partner, say it in their own words. I get the kids to do writing and solve the problems. And we do it together. And what am I doing? I'm correcting errors. I'm saying, no, not like this, like this. Maybe I bring them back all together and I reteach it to them. They don't know it yet. Whoop, back up. Let me teach it again. And I'm checking, and I'm checking. And I'm not just checking the kids in the front row who always have their hands up. The Hermione Grangers of my classroom already know the material. I'm checking the kids over here and the kid in the back. And you know what that means, really? That means that in my classroom, everyone needs to participate. And it means the person that is in control of this game is me. Because I need to hear from you, and I need to hear from you, and we need to say it together, and we need to be writing together. Everybody does everything. And in my classroom, there's this feeling of us rowing the boat together, us working together as a team to crush this material, to beat it, because we can. We just have to stay on the same pace, and my pace is brisk and fast. Let's go. There is no time to waste. We have to learn. And now, as I go on and I sort of check, I'm gonna make sure that the kid can do it by themselves. Tú haces. You do. And it goes in this very nice kind of direction where what started with what was heavily teacher-led, with lots of teacher support, gradually fades over here so that students are doing it by themselves within the same lesson most of the time. And at the end, I'm circulating and I'm looking and I'm helping the kids who need a little extra support. I'm pulling this kid over to the corner and I'm saying, hey, let me reteach you while everyone's working. And then we bring everyone back together. And I'm praising them. You're awesome. You're smart. You can do this. Good job. Look at us go. And the kids are getting 80, 90 to 100% of the answers correct because I didn't leave anything to chance. Now, if we go back to our novice expert difference, you can see the direction of travel. When children are novices, they don't know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're doing, so I'm going to go ahead and teach them. And then as they gain experience and they move on in their skills, I'm going to give them the chance to apply it in their own words, in their own ways. I might even give them a problem that's just a little bit tricky to test. Can they apply the principle that I taught to new material with unfamiliar features on it? So, this doesn't come, man, your air here is something wrong with your altitude up here. I'm like, I'm breathing hard. But this stuff matters. That's why I'm just kind of getting a little too intense. Now, the researchers have studied the best teachers. They've gone from classroom to classroom, and they've watched them. And they've looked, and they've seen and codified what do the best teachers do. I call this the clipboard research because I imagine them in there going, oh, the teacher modeled, the teacher checked, the teacher gave practice, the teacher was standing up, the teacher was sitting down. How many kids are responding? Was it just the one kid in the front, or was it everybody? How many responses did they get? And over time, we've come up with a pattern of what the most effective teachers do. This is the pattern right here. The best teachers, they model the material, and they model it in small steps, not in big chunks. It's too much information to be presenting all at once. They do it in little stepwise kind of progression. And another thing they do is they ask the kids lots of questions and check for understanding. How do I know if they've got it if I don't elicit their participation? If I don't listen to my class and adjust accordingly? Okay, we got to go back. We got to go back to something that I messed up on. I should have pre-corrected that, but I assumed too much. Back. Okay, we can go forward. My class is cruising. Sometimes in my class, they didn't need what I had planned for. They already knew it. Let's move on. I can only know that if I check everyone. And then the best teachers spent a lot of their time in practice. The kids are practicing things. All pencils down. All pencils are moving. Kids are writing. Teachers circulating and checking. And a lot of that was just review of old things, because as we know from the working memory bottleneck, that if you don't automate or get things to fluency, kids will forget it, and also it'll be really hard to use that skill when it comes up in a more complex problem later on. Now they had to come up with a name for this pattern that they, over several decades of observing teachers and finding what the best ones did, they had to come up with a name for it. They first called it direct instruction or active teaching. And today, we've mostly moved around this term right here. Explicit instruction. Enseñanza explícita. So if you're ever feeling like, I don't know what the method is that gets the most juice out of the lemon, that gets the most out of kids, well, you know it now. We've observed teachers, and we watch the ones that get the most achievement and the best scores out of their kids, and they all use a pattern of explicit instruction. Now, I'll go ahead and get to the end. Let's just use an educational example. I'm teaching my kids how to add fractions. I stand up in front of the class and I model it. Of course, I ask questions as I go. I check if they're listening. I ask them to repeat certain numbers. But as the kid gets more and more fluent, as they get stronger and stronger with the skill, I will slowly, like the question mark show, will slowly take away those supports. And I'll start to get them to do more of it and tell me more of it. And you're almost on your own. It's just like the backflip, right? It's just like the backflip. We're going to teach them just a little bit more, and we're going to take the mats away. We're going to take one mat off at a time, and we're going to see if you can still do it. And finally, at the very end, tú haces, your turn. Let's see if you can do it. And we can get a lot more kids on board given we follow this structure, as I've experienced with many, many kids. You know what? I just think I should mention that some of our students, they come to school already knowing the math. They have parents who help them a lot at school. It seems like they can just go a lot quicker. So a lot of teachers follow that student. They follow the kid who's answering everything correctly, who came in already knowing. But it's harmful to nobody to be teaching this material in such a systematic way, but it's especially beneficial to kids who really need school to learn this material, that we don't leave anything to chance in this way, that we do this explicit instruction process. Now, cognitive scientists over time have come up with principles on how to manage working memory, that bottleneck that is in every one of our children's heads. They've come up with a list of things to do. I'll let you read those. Part of what we need to do is just cut out a lot of the stuff that's just extra. I don't even mean from the lesson. A lot of times from lessons, teachers talk and say lots of things they don't need to say. We can cut those parts out. But I'm hearing from understanding the Colombian context, there's often just a lot of things that the school imposes on the curriculum, which is reducing the number of minutes the kids even have to learn. We have to cut that stuff out because we have to focus the kids' attention and their limited working memory on the things that are going to get them the most mileage, the things that are going to get them the farthest in life. We have to cut the fluff so we can, as Anita Archer says, teach the stuff that matters. Another thing I've talked about here is just this idea of breaking stuff down. And then you might think, well, that's obvious. Everyone breaks it down when they're teaching to the kids. Well, there's different ways to do that. And this is where, with teachers, we need to work with each other to create great models and great systems of instruction that really start with the most finite thing. You remember the math equation I did? I didn't know how to do that until someone showed me. We have to work together so that we can learn the size, the grain size, the small unit that kids learn, how granular it is to learn something. We need to be better at doing that, because that's where kids often fall off the bus. A lot of great teaching just involves giving great models, great examples, concrete models that get the kid to understand the principle. So we have to practice those things. We have to use those models that are small, short, brisk, and fast that really get kids learning. And much of teaching is just about practice. Kids need a lot of practice. Some people say, it's boring to give kids lots of practice. They'll be bored. I don't care. We're going to give them lots and lots of practice because I know that they're going to end up learning from it, and they'll actually be more successful. And kids love the feeling of being able to smash something first time. So a lot more practice in my lessons and making sure everyone does it. And finally, that gradual release of support. So kids are doing things increasingly by themselves. Now, I'll go ahead and kind of end here. Let me review some of these principles. My thinking is I want every kid that I teach to have a chance at university, to have a chance to make $1 million and go on and do great things. Where I live, owning a house, have enough money to be able to go out to a restaurant, being able to go on a vacation, that costs a lot of money. And a lot of kids deserve that opportunity just like I had. And so all of these things kind of, for me, they line up in a sort of a social justice way, in an equity way. How do we teach everybody? How do we get everyone the opportunity to reach their full potential? Faiza and Akaika and Sally and all these kids I used to have. How do we get them the support they need? Well, the first thing we need to remember is this right here. We know that kids come to school with a limited working memory, and we can't control what that is. We have the kids we have. We also know that kids have a long-term memory. I'll let you read that. We need to embed lots and lots of great ideas and content in their heads so that they can use that information to go make something of themselves. We also know this. Not everyone comes into school knowing all of the background knowledge that we all take for granted. If you're sitting in this room, you won. You are successful. A lot of kids didn't have the conversations that you had at home, and they don't have all of this background knowledge. They don't know how to hold a pencil. We have to teach them. And we have to teach them understanding that there's some kids that are going to need more time, and they're going to need more practice. What about them? We have to think about them too. And so, in order to close this gap that exists, I'll let you read it. In order to close this gap between the kids who are living in poverty, the kids that don't have all of this foundational knowledge that we all take for granted, the kids that don't come to school with the strongest, most powerful working memory and just need more support, we need to embrace the most effective and efficient methods that we know from learning science, because there's not a moment to waste. The clock is ticking, and it's ticking against the kids who need us to respond and need us to act so that they can learn too. And from my reading of the research, from looking at the evidence, and what I think research ed really does embrace is a fundamental core that to do this, we need to do this. Nuestra mejor opción es a través de la enseñanza explícita. Let's embrace a great pattern of effective, explicit teaching, and let's teach the heck out of this stuff. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.